He's accused of an unprecedented assault on human rights, and with press freedom under attack, much of the brutality goes unseen. Now on BBC World News, with scenes you may find disturbing, Cairo correspondent Ola Guerin meets victims and their families.
Welcome to Egypt. Enticing images of timeless hospitality and ancient attractions. A picture postcard view the authorities are keen to promote. But there is another Egypt, a military-backed regime, where dreams of freedom have been crushed. And this is the approach to dissent.
In the last few minutes, the police have been using tear gas and they've been using live rounds.
I've been the BBC's correspondent in Egypt for the past 4 years. I've tracked the escalating crackdown on the streets.
Gatherings like this are few and far between.
And I've witnessed peaceful protesters being targeted.
I've never seen a regime as bloody as Sisi's regime.
A regime where growing numbers simply disappear.
الشرطة اللي خدتها هنتهم مين؟ مين اللي خدها غير الشرطة؟ هم اللي جو ملثمين ومعاهم سلاح وعربية شرطة.
This regime is based on terror, and torture is one detail of that terror.
Press freedom is under attack. Much of the brutality goes unseen. This is a story the regime would prefer us not to tell. It all looked so different 7 years ago. This was Tahrir Square in February 2011. The night the people broke free of President Hosni Mubarak, ending 30 years of authoritarian rule. Or so they hoped. But the new dawn didn't bring a vibrant new democracy in the heart of the Middle East. Now the square feels like a place of lost opportunity.
Well, standing here in Tahrir Square 7 years on, there's really nothing to indicate that this was the cradle of an uprising, that it was here that the people toppled an autocrat. The monument is bare, no list of names of all of those who were killed, and that's just the way the authorities want it. It's as if the revolution has been erased, and along with it, the hope it brought.
The former military strongman, Hosni Mubarak, wound up behind bars. He was succeeded in 2012 by the Islamist Mohamed Morsi of the Muslim Brotherhood, Egypt's first democratically elected president. But Morsi too was jailed after a divisive year in office. He had been ousted in July 2013 in a military coup that had mass popular support. The coup was led by the army chief, General Abdel Fattah al-Sisi, who went on to be elected president a year later. Critics say he has presided over an unprecedented assault on human rights. I came to Cairo on Sisi's watch as history was being rewritten. Those hailed as heroes of the revolution were being treated as enemies of the state, like Alaa Abdel Fattah, one of Egypt's best-known dissidents. He's seen here out on bail. The blogger and human rights campaigner is from a prominent family of activists.
This was someone who could have been amazing, not just for this country. This is somebody with a really, really valuable mind and set of skills, and it's because of that that he's been put away and deactivated.
I met Alaa Abdel Fattah in April of 2014. He'd already been charged, and he talked about how much worse things were than before the revolution.
When you were confronting Mubarak, hope was a material thing, like you could almost touch it, you know. And so it was very easy to feel that it was worth it, and people were taking these risks without feeling any kind of despair. Right now it's looking very bleak.
Alaa Abdel Fattah was a leading light of the Tahrir protests. Articulate, secular, a software developer, used to paying a price for speaking out. He was jailed or threatened with arrest under all the recent regimes here. And when his son was born, he was in prison. Abdel Fattah was accused of organising this protest. The demonstrators appeared peaceful. The authorities were not. Protests are effectively banned. I was in court to see him being convicted. Others came forward to say they planned the protest. He still got 5 years. Another member of Generation Jail. His fractured family go through the motions. Without a much-loved son, husband and brother. Human rights groups say there are thousands like them in Egypt, families of political prisoners. His sister, Mona, campaigns against civilians being tried in military courts. His mother, Layla, has been an activist for decades. In this household, dissent is the family business. But Mona says the struggle for change is now harder than ever.
The level of bloodiness is beyond anything I've ever heard or experienced. And the way they have managed to desensitize people towards death, to belittle the value of people's life, to make people get used to death sentences, to forced disappearances and abduction, to torture victims. This is becoming daily news.
Her brother has another year to serve, then faces a further 5 years on probation with stringent conditions. In this tightly knit group, the empty space at the table is keenly felt. These days on the streets, there's no clamour for reform. Many are struggling to get by and grateful for relative stability. And plenty prefer not to raise their heads above the parapet, with good reason.
Well, there is something that you can't see here, but you can feel, and that's fear. It's been increasing during my time here. People who would have been ready to speak on camera 2 or 3 years ago are too frightened to do that now. In the last few weeks, we've looked into many cases, disappearances, torture, people whose loved ones were killed in custody, and those families were too frightened to appear. They tell us they're afraid another loved one will be arrested if they do.
Those who end up in custody can expect the harshest treatment. Torture is nothing new in Egypt, but my sources say now it's routine nationwide. Mahmoud Mohammed Hussein has first-hand experience of the latest torture techniques. We first met a year ago when every step was a reminder of the abuse he suffered. He was held without trial for more than 2 years. He says the only reason he was arrested, aged just 18, was because of his T-shirt. The slogan reads, "A nation without torture." Now 22, he's struggling to rebuild his life, but could still be tried for attending a banned protest and joining a terrorist group, charges he denies. Despite the risks, he wants to tell the world his story.
واتكهربت في مناطق حساسة في جسمي، يعني كان في كهرباء منها هنا وفي الجزء اللي تحت اتكهربت برضو فيه. يعني كنت معرفش، يعني ما كنتش عارف احساسي او شعوري ايه ساعتها، بس كنت حزين وبتألم جدا، وكان في ضرب بشكل متعمد يكون في المنطقه اللي انا قلت له ان انا رجلي فيها تعبانه، لدرجه ان هو خلاني لحد من دلوقتي من شهور قليله جدا كنت بستعمل عكاز وعملت اكتر من عمليه.
Aren't you afraid that by speaking out like this that the authorities could come after you again?
هو انا طبعا مدرك ده كويس جدا، وعارف ان يعني هو انا مش موجود عشان اقول مجرد كلام وخلاص. انا بقول الكلام علشان يعني هحب ان هو يكون يتشاف، لعل وعسى يعني يتخذ بيه ويكون يعني تحاول تنهي حاجه او على الاقل تخليهم يكونوا اشد حرصا في ان هم ما يعملوش حاجه. يعني اتمنى ان يكون كلامي بيتسمع ويتخذ بيه يعني.
Others also want their words to be heard, but feel unable to appear on camera, like another young man I met who described being subjected to every kind of abuse.
He gave us a detailed, credible and disturbing account. He identified the police station where he was interrogated and tortured. He said he was beaten, blindfolded, stripped, kicked and electrocuted. And later, in his words, he discovered there was something worse than electrocution. He was raped with a stick.
Torture victims used to have one refuge, one place to go for support: the Al-Nadim Centre in Cairo. For more than 2 decades, staff provided rehabilitation. But last year, the authorities moved in and forced the centre to close its doors. Its co-founder, a psychiatrist, says the prevalence of torture is the worst she's ever known.
You know, I work in this field since 1993. And I've been hearing about this field since my university years. What I've been seeing and what my colleagues at the center have been seeing since 2013 is unheard of. It was never, never, ever that bad.
So how widespread would you say the practice is now?
As widespread as the country. As widespread as the country.
What would you say to government officials here in Egypt who deny there is torture?
You're liars. I would say you're liars. I would say you know there is torture because you practice it. What can I say? And I would say that there will come the day, and maybe I will not witness that day, but there will come the day where those people will be brought to justice.
But justice can be elusive for anyone hidden behind the sun. That's what Egyptians call those who vanish from the streets and are held in secret by the state. Most are Islamists, but anyone opposing the regime is at risk. Human rights campaigners say enforced disappearances are a trademark of the Sisi era. They've documented at least 1,500 cases in the past 4 years. but they believe the real figure is much higher.